Mr. Mayor and Council. I was looking for Matt Carr, Council Member Carr, and he will join us when he's available. So we have reached 6:30 and you may begin.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. I'll call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Welcome all committee members and welcome everyone watching us on the live stream this evening. We're glad that you're with us. The second item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary interest, and I'll ask any member if you have a pecuniary interest you'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime you need to. I see on the agenda that the open forum has moved past the delegations. Is that an error or is that just me? Maybe just my version. I believe it would be appropriate to look to the open forum now.
Yes.
We did have one request for the open forum. Linda, is that individual with us?
No, he is not.
Okay, so we'll move on then and we'll go to delegations, and we have two delegations this evening. And the first one is from John Crane. I'll just remind all the delegations that our delegations are 10 minutes in length, and so we appreciate if you stick to that timeline for us. But with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Crane. He's going to speak to us about the road construction on the shoreline. Mr. Crane.
Yes, good evening, councillors and Mayor Luke and Linda White. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you about this important subject for me and my family. So it's really a comment on the Burkhart proposal to open up the construct a road on the shoreline. It's in front of my house, my properties, and my neighbor. On April 26th, you heard the proposal, and I'd like to go through it. Are you going to share my presentation? Okay, there we go. Everyone can see that, I hope.
Yep, we have it.
Okay, next slide, please. So right now, the Burkhart properties, they have full access to Saugeen Beach Road, and that access has been available for over 30 years, well before they purchased their properties. And they have driveways onto Saugeen Beach Road. And that's the same access as all other neighbors in the community. They've got an access to a roadway. Now back in the late 80s, before they had built Huron Drive or Smith Lane, people wanted access and they wanted to open up this original shore allowance. And this is a copy of a letter from the clerk from the council at the time declining the approval to open up this access way along the shore road. The council of the day came down here, they know the area, they looked and they said, this is no place for any kind of road to be built. We are not going to open up an access way. Next slide. Subsequent to that, the same lots that the Burkharts now own, lots 9 and 10, an amendment or a bylaw amendment was brought in front of council, and the planning department looked at it, and they wanted access to build. So they wanted to flip the lots around. And this is a copy of the planning document. So the second paragraph, 2 lots, 9 and 10, Plan 472, Township of Saugeen, front onto an unopened road allowance. So that's the road allowance that we're talking about. It's not opened. It never was open. And the proposal was to reorient the lots back onto a Class 1 municipal road, which is maintained, and that's Saugeen Beach Road. So subsequent to that, you can go to the next. So there's the flipped around lots. This is the way the lots are now. They were reoriented. On the bottom, you see they have full access to Saugeen Beach Road, and the shoreline road allowance at the top is not constructed. Never was never opened. And that decision has never been overturned. It was a wise decision. That council wanted nothing to do with it, the expense, the liabilities, all of the issues. Okay, next slide. And this is a copy of the actual plan that the staff report was put in on April 26th. You can see at the top, the shore road allowance has not been opened. At the bottom, they put a driveway permit in. They've been issued a driveway permit that was constructed there. And that's on Saugeen Beach Road. And my property is right on the bottom there. Okay, next slide. So here's a picture of the area. On the right, you have the 4th concession. And then you have my neighbor's house, my house, and I have 2 vacant lots. And then the far left is the Burkhart property where they want access along this road allowance. The road allowance is no place to open a road. It still remains a bad idea. It's actually in the lake. It's on the beach or fully on a dynamic beach. In the last 2 years, you can see on the one area, we've lost probably 40, 50 feet of vegetative plants that actually hold and secure the shoreline. This is very, very close now to overtopping that road and flooding my property. It's a very serious situation. That bay is fully exposed to Lake Huron with a northwest exposure. The waves roll in there, it's unbelievable. So there's no place to build a road. Some of the facts. So this road allowance would be 1/4 of a kilometer long. It's 100% on environmental hazard designated land. All of it's in Lake Huron on the beach or on the dynamic beach. It's going to be subject to huge force and erosion from Lake Huron. And it already has. It's really, really serious. And we know that. Hugely expensive. 100% of the neighbors do not want it opened. Right now, that is just a footpath, a dirt footpath on the shore. There's no gravel. It's not a gravel road. It's a dirt footpath. Other roads along the shore we know are being eroded. It's very bad and being damaged. I misspelt it, Goebel's Grove. You can see we're down to half a lane there. It's the same area, the same situation. Next slide, please. So, you know, we really shouldn't be in the business of figuring out building logistics for people. They're given access. Everyone builds their own properties, gets together with their builder, and they sort it out how they're going to build it. So truly, we shouldn't be in the business of figuring these other logistics out. But if they are that important, the Burkharts own the property. They can put a small driveway right in 20 meters, and they're on the left there, and they're onto this vacant property. And if things come, they're that dire, come and see me on the right. I can help out. I have no problem. But building it on this shore is a bad idea. Bad idea. Next slide. So right in our own official plan, and it's a good document. I went through it. It's a very, very good document. It's not hard to read. Environmental hazard. It shows right on the land use map. This whole area from the property line right to the lake is environmental hazard, that entire road allowance. And it's recognized, this is right from the plan, it's unsuitable for development. And it is, truly it is. It's subject to natural hazard features, flooding, erosion, dynamic beach hazards with Lake Huron. That's exactly correct. Exactly correct. So what are the permitted uses of environmental hazard designation? It's really conservation, public green space, which is what it is now. We can't change that. Next slide. Really, the objective is retention of the green space. Get a buffering feature against this waterfront area. Next slide. So this is the natural environment, and the goal is really maintain, restore, and enhance. And it goes on to describe it, the beach areas and dynamic beach areas. We have to maintain them, restore them, enhance them. They're not suitable for any development, and they aren't, truly, they aren't. And the final thing is right in this same clause is to protect the population and properties from these natural hazards by restricting or prohibiting development. And truly, we're within inches of overtopping this road here with the high water. when the storms roll in. It's nasty. It's bad. You know, and your property and your house is being threatened. You feel it. Next slide. So the road allowance, you know, in summary, this proposal to open a 1/4 kilometer long unconstructed road allowance on an undeveloped waterfront beach, environmental hazard land, will be devastating and contrary to the official plan. The financial costs will be enormous. Staff involvement, all the assessments, engineering, construction, maintenance. It will severely and negatively impact the adjacent property owners who are 100% against this proposal. 100%. The previous council said, no way. We are not opening up this road allowance. We're not building any type of road. No way. And that stands. The proposal is redundant. There is no need. There's full access to these properties. And other access options are available. Next slide, please. So in summary, you know, we're really asking you to please stand with the community on this one. The property owners, the people who walk, the animals who depend on this habitat, the bird migration that happens through here onto these trees. I walked the area today, 400 trees are on that road allowance. Mature pines, white pines, red pines, birch, cedars, everything. 400 trees. They depend on this habitat, fragile plants that exist here. So if not you, then who's going to stand up and conserve this as for the official plan? This is environmental hazard green space and a walking trail. Do not construct an unnecessary, expensive, damaging roadway for the benefit of one property owner who already has access. And this is a unique and fragile piece of waterfront. Maybe the only one like it in the whole town. Please do not expose the adjacent property owners who are all opposed to the negative impacts and devastating erosion, flooding, and impacts on a new, unwanted, and unnecessary redundant road. Please don't do it. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Sorry about that, I was muted. Thank you for that, Mr. Crane. And now we'll turn it over to members of the committee for questions or comments. Councillor Minot. Nope, Dave, you're muted there. I don't know if you're talking.
There. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Crane, for your presentation, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Crane, I'm left after your presentation just a little bit confused because the information as you present it is somewhat different than what was presented by Dr. Burkhart a couple of meetings ago. And the legend, the map that he shows is the road, or what he claims to be a road, is not on the shore road allowance. And in fact, the aerial photograph that you present, you can see the twin tracks of what is the remains of the shore road that does not lie on the shore road allowance. And I've walked down there, and quite frankly, you can tell it's, I wouldn't categorize the bed underneath that trail as delicate ecosystem. There's a gravel base under there, and it also some of the conflicting information is that he was awarded a permit to build a driveway onto that road. That road, which, by the way, when the first time I went down there to look at it in my Honda, I have a navigation system, and my Honda navigation system shows the road going in there. So at some point in time, it was a road. Nobody's asking for a new road to be built, as you seem to characterize it. What's being in contention? What's in contention here is whether or not the road bed that is there is an actual road or not an actual road, and if it is an actual road, is it open or is it closed? So, like I said, I'm left a little bit confused with your presentation because you seem to be proposing that the application is to build a new road on an unopened shore road allowance, which obviously we don't do. In very, very rare circumstances would we ever consider doing that. The shore road allowance is just that, it provides a buffer between the high water levels and the high water mark and the properties. But the map clearly shows there is a section of property there between where your property ends and where the shore road allowance starts. And that is the area that's of contention at this point. So if you could clarify that for us, I'd very much appreciate it.
Great.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I just want to say there's a map that shows a road allowance. That's where the road would have to go. So part of that pathway is on that road allowance. And at the north end, it veers off on another little section of property that's not on the road allowance. It's a pathway. So over the years, people just, not unusual in this area, they wandered on any part of property or wherever they felt like going. But the fact remains, it's not an open road allowance. There is no road there. There's a pathway. You can see it in the staff pictures that they put on there on April 26th. And as far as the base, as saying it's gravel, it's not. It's sand, there's rock. It's the old road, shore allowance. You go into McGregor Park, it's the exact same thing. And when the water hits that, believe me, it disappears. Come and have a look, it disappears fast. And there has never been an open road allowance there, ever. I've lived here 36 years.
So you're saying nobody's ever driven down that road before?
I didn't say that. Over the years, of course, people have seen every manner of vehicles going along the shores.
So Dr. Burkhart claims that he has had access to that road for
through the
years.
chair, would you? We're not going to debate the delegation, so let's address the comments through the chair. Do you have another comment you want to make, Councillor Mayette? Okay, let's go to Councillor Rich then.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for your presentation, John. I only have two questions. My first question is a couple of times during your presentation, you say 100% of all the adjacent property owners are opposed to it.
Right.
So you're the adjacent property owner, and then I would say someone else. When you say 100%, are you talking about you?
Yeah, there's 4 lots south of where the Burkhart property is. I have 3 of the lots and my neighbor has another lot, correct.
So 100% meaning 2 people, right? Okay, I just want to make sure that we're clear with that. And then I'll ask you the same question that I asked Chad when he did his presentation. I asked him if he would be happy if there was a lockable gate that would give him access. You'd have to open it and he'd be able to drive in there. I don't know how often he would use it, and then you would be able to access it as well, as in all 4 of those property owners would have access to that road. Would that be something that you would be open to?
Well, I think that really sets a bad precedent. It's almost like we're going to fund a private driveway. You think of all the different right-of-ways, green spaces, unopened road allowance. What precedent does that set? If people say, oh, you did it here, I want to put a new pool in my backyard, I want to drive across a park or an open allowance, you did it here, well, why can't I do it? It just doesn't make sense. There's really no need for it. That's the other issue. And there's no access allowed from our properties. Like it was the way it's surveyed. There is no other access allowed, and we don't want it. We don't need it. Everyone's built their houses. We don't need to be driving there. It's not an area to drive on. And
thank you. I just wondered if you'd be amenable to it. I'm trying to find a compromise. That's all.
Well, the compromise is really the other access points that we've offered. If we really need to get into developing access points for people other than what they're offered, there are other options, but that shouldn't be the business we're in.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Mayette, or pardon me, the Vice Deputy Mayor. Sorry, Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it seems to me that there's already access off of Saugeen Beach Road for the 2 lots owned by the Burkhardt, so they have an in and out, already. I think this whole request belongs in the hands of staff to do some research on. I mean, there's environmental concerns here, Mr. Mayor. There's Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority are probably going to have to be involved. I like to hear from engineering staff about constructing a road and potential costs, and should we be spending a penny of taxpayers' money on a new road? What does a new road look like? I think there's risk liability. I think there's a whole lot of questions that we can't answer here this evening, and I think that I like to go back to the history of Saugeen Township days and why was it turned down twice to put a road in, is my understanding. I think this is a whole lot of questions. We're not going to be able to resolve it tonight. I think we need to turn this back to staff, obviously, and come back with a staff report and answer some of the concerns and questions that Mr. Crane has, and answer some of the requests that Mr. Burkhardt has, and see where this thing all fits into a staff report. So I think it's got to be, we're not going to resolve this tonight, and we can debate with Mr. Crane all we want and Mr. Burkhardt, but it doesn't really make sense for the broader community and to build a lane way for an individual. So I'd recommend this go back to staff. Well, it will anyways, I guess. Staff will come back with a staff report. Mr. Mayor, is that the procedure?
It's a good segue. This is a matter that's being dealt with by staff and which will be discussed by council. In the end, a decision will be made by council. We have a request and we'll render some sort of verdict on it. But that work is already underway, and we will hopefully find a resolution one way or the other. Is there anything further from anyone else? I don't see anything. So thank you very much, Mr. Crane. We much appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so that moves on to our second delegation, which is from Patricia Frank from the Beach Preservers. She's here to talk to us about a survey conducted by the Beach Preservers. And there's Miss Frank.
There we go.
The floor is yours. Yep, we hear you.
Okay, great. Allison, you ready? Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors and staff. I'm here this evening to present the results of a survey conducted by the Port Elgin Beach Preservers. Over the past 2 years, those that are in favor of the Cedar Crescent Village have repeatedly claimed that the vast majority of residents in Saugeen Shores are in favor of this development and want to see it move forward. We have yet to see any substantial proof of this report and support. Several of our members asked council for a survey to gauge the public's approval of this development, but were met with silence. So we decided to create a survey ourselves and offer it to the public. We attempted to make the survey as fair and unbiased as possible. We asked ourselves, as a person in favor of this development, did I have the opportunity to express my support for this venture? And the answer was yes. First shared on April 29th via radio and newspaper ads, social media, and our Facebook group, the survey ran for 3 weeks. We received 1,926 responses. 1,876 of these had validated email addresses. Results I will share are those submitted on or before May 19th. 2 years ago, on July 23rd, 2019, the town conducted a survey regarding the amenities requested at the waterfront. Amenities suggested by the proponents in their design plan, not ones suggested by the greater public. Perhaps people would have appreciated ideas like a new mini putt, more climbing equipment, or rope climbing, to name just a few. 77% of respondents to this survey, next one, Allison, live in Saugeen Shores permanently or they own property here. It's important to note that 22.4% were visitors to the beach that responded. And one of the key suggestions of the Waterfront Master Plan of 2013 was to ask the visitors to the beach what they wanted to see. But sadly, this was never done. Question number 1, over the last 2 years, we have been astonished by the number of people we have spoken with who had no idea that this project was about to happen. You might say that the public should have known, that they should be paying attention to council meetings, read the minutes on the town website, but sadly, people don't often get involved until they are personally affected. 57.3% did not feel well informed about this development. The total area of the Cedar Crescent Village is 68,000 square feet, and the building footprint makes up approximately 32,000 square feet of that space. You can see from the Google map on the left that the village will take up a large section of the waterfront from Elgin to Mill Streets. The proponent's concept design from November 9th, 2020 is on the right-hand side. Question number 2 was, is the scope and size of the Cedar Crescent Village appropriate for the waterfront area? 83% said no, it was not appropriate. And 16.8% said yes, it was. Question number 3, is the location of the village appropriate? The hashed green area on the right-hand side, as posted in February 2019, is the request for proposal as initially set out. 84% of the respondents felt it is not appropriate for this village to be located along the promenade. 16% approve of the location. Question number 4, given that 84% think that the site is inappropriate, what is the solution? Should the Cedar Crescent Village be moved back to the original site in the request for proposal? 16.9% were okay with it being along the promenade, and 83.1% said either move it back, scale it down in size, or move it off the beach altogether. And there was, I haven't counted them all, but there was many that said, we just don't want it. The lease. There are some who feel that the investment being entered into here warrants a 50-year lease. With high water levels and climate change concerns, was it prudent to commit to such a long-term lease? Did any one of us predict this pandemic? Many things can change over 50 years. 81.3% feel that this lease is not appropriate. 18.7% feel it is. Question number 6 was with regards to parking. We all know how crowded the parking is here in the summer. Add on to that gatherings of 250 people at the event hall for a wedding, and our already stretched to capacity parking lot will be overloaded, and beachgoers will be forced to park on nearby streets, many of which have limited or no parking. 80% of the respondents said that this parking was inappropriate. Question 7 said, should there be a 250-person event hall on the waterfront? It wasn't wanted in the survey 2 years ago, and it isn't wanted now. 81% said no. Question number 8, with regards to a small group of retail shops, the response was fairly even split between yes and no, almost identical to the one in the 2019 survey, 54% in favor and 46% against. Question number 9, as in 2019, there was generally strong support for Marina Store. 62% of the respondents were in favor of it. Question number 10, looking into the future, can a 4-season commercial development on the beach be financially successful? 77% feel that no, it can't, and 23% say yes, it can. Leave that as it is. So moving forward, we are currently at the stage in the process where the development must receive regulatory approvals to proceed. All waterfront developments require permit application approval from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, our local environmental agency. The SVCA has 3 options. It can approve the permit with conditions, or decline the permit. Shore Plan Engineering submitted a coastal engineering report on behalf of the proponent and suggested 3 measures to alleviate the risk of flooding to this development. Bring in fill to raise the site level, build a barrier wall, and floodproof the building. 76.4% do not think that these measures are appropriate or enough. 23.6% thought the measures were appropriate. Question number 12. The SPCA then hired geoscientist Peter Zuzek to do a peer review of the shore plane report. He expressed serious environmental concerns about the methodology and conclusions of the shore plane report. The question posed was, given these concerns, should the town rescind its permit application for the Cedar Crescent Village? 76 responded yes, rescind the application. 24 responded no, ask for a hearing of the Executive Council of the SPCA. Question number 13 was a little complicated. As I said before, there's a chance that the SPCA will deny this application. Should that happen, respondents were asked whether the town should appeal the decision to the Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs. We started with just a yes or no in our model, but our sample group found that the wording was unclear. So we decided to clarify the response to yes, they should appeal. It's because of the negative. Yes, they should appeal the negative SPCA ruling, or no, the town should accept the negative SPCA ruling and go no further. Unfortunately, Google Forms kept both the simple yes and no model as well as the clarified versions. So for the sake of transparency, we felt that the multiple response pie chart on the left should be shown. In the pie chart on the left, the green and blue together are both yes answers. 19% stating that council should appeal a negative ruling. And the red and orange together are both no answers. 81% stating that council should accept a negative ruling and not appeal the decision. Question number 14, this is a simple one. If the SPCA does not approve this permit application, should the town rescind the lease? 84% of the respondents thought the lease should be rescinded in this situation if it was turned down. Last word, what can we glean from this information? The claim that the majority of taxpayers are supportive of the Cedar Crescent Village is certainly called into question. This survey had several hundred more respondents than the survey of 2019 or the recently completed water tower survey. In all but the marina and shops questions, there is an 80-20 split against going forward. Whether or not council accepts the results of this survey, it cannot be denied that this is a major issue and should not proceed without public support. Is it time to resurrect the ad hoc committee? Stakeholders in the new ad hoc committee could come from swimmers, boaters, flea market vendors, the Volleyball Association, the Beachers Association, the two existing restaurants, local property owners, etc. Their job would be to represent their user group and provide clear questions and comments on the concept plan drawings and details that impact their area of interest. Disposition of concerns would be addressed either through a clear answer with strong justification or a design change to eliminate the raised concern. This could be happening right now. The question is, why isn't it? Will the survey results presented this evening prompt council to reconsider what's happening here? At the very least, the municipality of Saugeen Shores and the lessee have the responsibility to engage all stakeholders in the decision-making process moving forward. I don't think we've seen anything community-wise happen since the lease was granted in December 2019. Community engagement is the key to the success of this project. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frank. I might just, before I turn it over, just a matter of clarification, I guess. It's important just so that the facts of the process are clear, that SPCA decisions are not appealable to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing or overturnable by municipal zoning orders. They're appealable to the Ministry of Natural Resources. I just thought that should be pointed out so nobody misunderstands how that process works. Questions or comments? Councillor Schreiner.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Patricia. Really appreciate your presentation tonight and the hard work that went into this. I'm a numbers person. I always have been, and I probably always will be. You had a total of 1,876 respondents, which I think is phenomenal in 3 weeks, I think is what you indicated that it was open for. So I think that that should be celebrated. The approximate population of Saugeen Shores is 14,000 people. 55% of the respondents of your survey are full-time residents. 22% of them are property owners, but have a main residence elsewhere. So therefore, my math was 1,449 of the 1,876 respondents are ratepayers. Is that fair to? I know they're rough numbers, but do you agree?
But do not the people that own property here, are they not also ratepayers? They pay taxes.
No, that was included. So 77%.
Okay.
Yeah. So the ratepayers are full-time residents, but also property owners that have residence elsewhere.
And that, correct, that was 77.
Okay,
Through you,
perfect.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, I got to get that right.
That's okay. You go ahead and respond.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. And the remaining, and I'll put 412 people are visitors to the area, which are just as important, but not ratepayers. That's how I divided that in my head. So 1,449 people are ratepayers who participated in the survey, and that represents about 10.3% of our total population of Saugeen Shores. When I look at some of the questions that were asked, and today when I went through this for a final time just to do some notes, I picked 2 questions and they were very random that I did this. And these are just kind of assumption-based calculations with using that 77% of our ratepayers. So question number 2 regarding the size and scope, 83% of the respondents feel that the location is not, or the size and scope is not appropriate, and 17% feel that it is appropriate. And that's question number 2. So 83% of your respondents of that number, if we use 77%, which are ratepayers, that represents 8.5% of our total population that are not pleased with the size and scope of the development. Another example that I have, question number 4, is the location of it. 59% feel that it should be relocated to the east, kind of flipped the parking lot. So 59% of the 1,876 respondents are 1,107 people. And if we use that 77% of the ratepayers, which is an assumption-based calculation that participated in the survey, 852 people feel that the location should be reversed and that it should be moved more to the east. And that number, 852, is 6% of our population of Saugeen Shores. And the reason that I did this is the statement that's on slide 20 of your presentation that says, do the majority of taxpayers want the CCV as it currently is proposed? More than 80% say no. And so I took that time. I do not feel that the data represents or supports that statement that's on slide 20. I think that 10.3% of our residents participated in the survey, but not 80% of the residents of Saugeen Shores do not support that. For me, the focus and energy should be, and you alluded to it in your last few slides, should be the Saugeen Valley conservation process and permits, the engineering reports, and reasonable solutions. And that's where my focus is. I think we have a responsible and a professional staff to work through the process, to work with the governing agencies and the developer. I think the beach preservers, led by you, but I think the beach preservers are a passionate group who have went to great lengths to support their members and their vision. And I do applaud that. I think that, as I mentioned, I think to get that result on a survey of 3 weeks, I think is excellent, and it should be celebrated. As I mentioned, I'm not always a fan of surveys, and I've said this when our town or we've paid a consultant to launch a survey for us, is that they're not always successful. And I think the issues sometimes are, how the questions are phrased, and also is the number of respondents. And I think with something like this, when I look at what our total population is, and that we had 10%, it just doesn't support that 80% of Saugeen Shores does not support this. And so that's why I went to that. I do, like I've always said to you, I thank you when you come. You always come and you leave me thinking about more things that I haven't thought about and ideas. And I think that this exercise did help me. Your presentation helped me. I appreciate the time that I took tonight to go through this and everybody's patience. I just don't think that with the survey results, what they are, it does not change my mind that I shouldn't be still supporting it, that the community for the most part is not against it, as what is stated in some of the slides. This is an incredible amount of work. Those that have not done a survey before will not understand the great amount of time and effort that Patricia and her group went through. And I think the data fetching from those is a lot of work as well. So I do thank you for that. But at the end of the day, I just don't feel that it's the representation that is stated on slide 20. So, but thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
May I respond, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, sure.
First of all, I don't really understand why you're negating the visitors. It was clear from the waterfront master plan that the visitors needed to be consulted here, and that is why we included them here. You applaud the fact that there's over 1,800 validated emails. Where were the emails required for the 2019 survey? Where were the emails required for the water towers? They were not. So we provided validated emails of maybe, yes, 1,400 were citizens. But if you feel that that's not enough, then darn it, then the town maybe should do a referendum or should do their own survey and show us that there are 80% in favor of this development. I cannot believe the number of people we have talked to that know, and they should know what's going on, but they don't. And it's very confusing. And I want everybody to know that we didn't touch the responses to this survey. We collected them through the Google platform of Google Forms, which I believe the town uses. Then it spits out an Excel CSV file. We took that file and we sent it to the top email validator firm in Canada and the US called Zero Bounce. Of the 1,926 email addresses, 54 were invalid, most because they were misspelled. They put gmail.com instead of gmail.com. But some were from smart Alex that wanted to put their survey can be easily manipulated at ccb.com, thinking they were being funny. But we don't think any of this is funny. We think it is very serious. And we are concerned about our waterfront. And we feel that the 1,400 citizens should be taken seriously. The 400 visitors should be taken seriously. And there has to be something done to prove to the public, to prove to us that this is what the people want, and we will back off.
Can I just clarify just one thing, Mr. Mayor, sorry?
Yeah, we'll get just one comment from you and then we'll go to another member of council. Sure.
Perfect, thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify the 412 people, visitors, they are very important. And I think I indicated that. The reason that I didn't use them in the calculation was on slide 20, it says 80% of ratepayers. So that's why I did remove that. It's not that they're not important. That's not my opinion at all. They are very important to our town and our tourism industry for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Further comments from other members? Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Patricia. And you put a whole lot of work into the survey, and you presented some interesting information. And I've always said from the beginning that every member of the public should have their say. And I've read on some social media things. I probably read too much social media, that council hasn't listened. We're not listening. I am listening. I've been listening right from the beginning, and I'm going to continue to listen. And I'm going to be listening right to the point. I'm very interested to hear what Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority staff have to say with the permit application. I said last meeting and I think the meeting before and the meeting before, this is the process. And we have to let the process run through the process, unfold. And until the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority make their decision, it's really it still leaves a whole lot of questions in terms of the development. I'm for one, you talked about in one of your slides, the size of the development. We still have some say in site plan control. I'm anxious to see, and I see Phil's on the call, and I had a question for him about the train station. And one of your slides was a big question mark. And I guess my question, Patricia, why is the question mark there? What is it you don't understand about the train? And Phil, is the train still part of the development? I understand it is, but the big question mark in one of the slides, I'd like to address that slide. I think there are some people in the community that like to see the train. And so I guess the question mark, Patricia, was because maybe you don't understand whether it's going to be part of it or not. Phil, can you answer that question?
Yes, Vice Deputy Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the train is still on being considered. The tracks have been preserved in North Shore Park, and as the proponent progresses the design, the train is still a consideration.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I appreciate that. And I just want to again repeat that let the process run through the process, and let Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority make their decision, and that's certainly going to have an impact on where this whole development heads. And when we get to site plan control, let's have another discussion about the look and the feel and the size, and we're going to have that discussion again when the time's right. So I look forward to those discussions. I'm going to continue to ask questions. I have been listening. People think that this council hasn't listened. I certainly have, and I believe we all have listened. Pat, one last point, Patricia, you mentioned about the creation of a stakeholder team, and I guess I thought maybe our CAO, maybe the CAO can comment on this, but I thought maybe there was a meeting with the Port Elgin Beach Preservers and CAO and you, Patricia, and I just wondering where that ended up. And I guess what the point, I wasn't, at this point is a creation of a key stakeholder team, just before Kara speaks. What would the purpose of that be again, Patricia?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The idea is not, we did have an excellent meeting with Kara on February 5th, but that was just 5 people that happened to live within very close proximity or right across the street from this development. And I don't think it should be just us. That there's so many other people that are key factors, from the lifeguard group to the life-saving group to the volleyball people, to it shouldn't be just us. You get a group where there's one person that comes from each one of those factions, and they come together and make suggestions, and not the whole group of us, maybe one person from our group, but that way you've really got all the people that are impacted by this development are brought together to look at this and to look at the site plans and make some suggestions. We've heard nothing since February 5th. I know that it's going back and forth, and absolutely it's got to go through the SPCA process.
Okay.
But we don't feel, I don't feel it's just the beach preservers. It's
Okay.
more than just that.
Mr. Mayor, and maybe Kara, I don't know whether you want to add to that or not before I ask the question, Mr. Mayor. No, Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering, pending SPCA decision, there will be an opportunity, right, with site plan control. There will be the opportunity for this council to sit down and hash over this again in terms of the look, feel, and size, all those sorts of things, right? Once the location's been determined, once SPCA make a decision, there's a whole nother big step here, correct?
I think it's important to be clear, right, that one of the reasons why not a lot has gone on in terms of council decision making or public discussion is that that SPCA decision is really critical to be able to move to that stage, right? You need the SPCA's decision, what the flooding, what's the elevations like, it's a lot of detailed engineering work needs to be done. And then you can design, then you can come up with a final design, and then that can come to council for that discussion. And that's why it hasn't happened. You know, just those steps have to happen in order, and they haven't happened yet. So there will, as you point out, the Vice Deputy Mayor correctly points out, there is another step, another approval that's going to be required from this council to approve a final site plan for the project. And so what I can say to the public is I don't know when that will happen. It just depends on this process, which, as I said before, is a pretty routine process for a big project, close to a hazard that's regulated by the authority. And they take their time and they finish when they finish. And we'll hope that that's sooner than later. But that you're correct in saying that.
Thanks for that, Mr. Mayor. And I see this. I read on the weekend. There's another report from Phil Eagleson, update on the CCV report later on the agenda this evening. So I'm pleased to see those reports keep coming. I think it's important that we keep this as open and transparent as we can. And I feel that staff, this is a good report Phil has again tonight. Will be some further discussion on the lease. So anyways, thanks again for your presentation, Patricia.
Sure. A quick comment, Patricia. Yeah.
Yes, just through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to the question mark on the train, we hadn't heard anything about the train in a long time. And on the plans, of course, there's nothing on the concept plans that we've seen about the train. And the key investor that was going to be looking after the train is no longer with the investor group. So that's why we questioned sort of, was it still in place? And I heard Mr. Eagleson say it's being considered. That doesn't mean it's a given.
Okay, Councilor Rich, you had a question or comment?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Patricia, thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate your passion, and continue to speak out and let your passion come forward, because I think we all care about the beach. We all care about the waterfront. I don't think it's an us versus them sort of thing. I myself am very comfortable with the process. I'm comfortable watching it unfold. I will say that I do struggle with a survey that comes from a special interest group. So you must admit that you do have an agenda. Your group has an agenda, and the information that you're going to be able to solicit is probably going to be more likely to be weighted. So that's why it doesn't really sway me that much. But nevertheless, I appreciate all the comments you brought forward. And I love seeing people that are passionate about this community and where it goes in the future. But I do like public-private partnerships. And one of the things that I love about public-private partnerships is allowing the business world to give a proposal and then follow it through. I love the regulation that'll go through, but we cannot get in the way of someone's business plan and try and kind of micromanage it as it unfolds from my perspective. But again, thank you so much for your time. You've obviously put a lot of work into this, and it really is appreciated.
May I respond to what Mr. Rich said?
Sure,
Through you, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, just briefly.
I'll be quick. I just send it right back to you. We wouldn't have done this if the town had done it. So much has changed in the last 2 years. I just really feel that the town should do a survey, and we'd be willing to say, okay, we'll help with forming that survey and working with you on it. But that was the only reason that we did it, because it was not being done, and too much has changed in 2 years to just go on as it is.
Okay, thank you. Are there, we're coming up on half an hour here, so are there any other final questions or comments from members before we end this one? I just say for myself, I guess it's always important to remember that a lot of things go into council's decision making. Our master plans, we had a committee, we had a couple of big public meetings where we heard from a lot of members of the public, well beyond the beach, people from all over the community. We did a survey of our own. We've heard several times, and I think it's really important to be clear, given some of the comments I've heard. I mean, I think it would be hard to deny that council has heard in this forum from the beach preservers several times. We're always willing, as always, to hear from you in accordance with our procedural bylaw, obviously. When it's not in accordance with the procedural bylaw, we can't do it. But as long as it is, this forum exists, and we're happy to continue to hear from anybody who wants to speak. in that way. So, so anyway, we have your survey here, and I think we can certainly, along with the proponent, our lessee, as it were, give due consideration to it as we move forward, not only with this project, but with revitalization on the Port Elgin Main Beach in general. So, so thank you very much, Ms. Frank, and we appreciate your time this evening. Okay, so we'll move on then. Yeah, so we're moving on, sorry, to a public meeting held under the Planning Act, and it's with regard to a planning report on Concession 6 employment land. So I'll just to put on my planning hat here and go through the spiel for a planning meeting. So for everybody listening this evening, what we will be doing is having this public meeting. We will begin by hearing a presentation from the planner, in this case, Mr. Kingsbury. Then we will open the floor and hear, I guess in this case, comments from the proponent, if the proponent is interested in speaking, and then from members of the public. Following which, after we've heard from all the members of the public, and I have about 4 who are interested in speaking this evening, then there'll be an opportunity for members of the committee to ask questions for clarification. And it's important for everyone to be clear right off the bat that council, the committee, will not be making any decisions on this file this evening. This is simply an opportunity to hear from the public on this file before the file returns to council for decision making. So with that, I'll turn it over to the planner for the planning report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will just share my screen here so I can give the presentation. Just bear with me. Okay, very good. Thank you. So this is a proposal for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the creation of a business park on the former Lamont pit lands. So if you're looking at the screen right now, this hatched area is the proposed business park area. It's comprised of 14.5 hectares of a broader 38.5 hectare parcel. Council will recall previously in 2020, there was a zoning bylaw amendment that permitted a sports field complex in this area over here, marked Lamont Sports Park. So I'll just take you through the nuts and bolts of the proposal, starting with some surrounding context. This picture here is on Concession 6 facing east. You can see in the background there's some heavy machinery in the area of the Lamont sports field complex, and the current agricultural use is consistent with the entire area of the business park area that's planned right now. There's environmental protection lands surround the proposed business park. Across the road, there's agricultural and residential uses, as well as licensed pits that are currently in operation. So they're zoned extractive industrial. Servicing, there's potential for water to extend water to the site, but as I'll get into in greater detail, sewer, extending sewer or sanitary sewer is not financially feasible at this point due to the distance. I believe it's about half a kilometer away to the closest connection. And access is via Concession 6, which is a year-round municipal road. So this is a sort of proposed layout. This comes from work that MHBC Planning out of Kitchener-Waterloo did for the town. They developed a planning development concept and servicing strategy for the lands. And you'll see there's, again, this is a proposed lot configuration, but one that MHPC concluded gives the town sort of maximum flexibility in terms of potential businesses that may locate there. Lot sizes are approximately 1 to 3 acres in size, and they can be consolidated to larger land holdings if there's a larger proposed use requiring it. And the lands with frontage on concession 6 would in most likelihood form phase 1 of any proposed development, and the rear of the lands would be developed through likely through a plan of subdivision at some point. So there is a and again, I'll get into greater detail. There's a the current designation is extractive industrial, so there's a need to redesignate those lands to employment. In this case, an employment exception is proposed, and the creation of a new zone within the town zoning bylaw to implement the employment exception uses would be called business park. And then there's special provisions within the proposed business park zone for site plan control, compatibility, and there's some archaeological sites with archaeological significance on the lands that need to be accounted for as well. So I'll probably refer back to this map frequently through the presentation just to provide an overview. But just broadly speaking, these lines are buffer lines, and they coincide or demarc compatibility buffers with sensitive uses. So a house is considered a sensitive use, and the province has a guideline called the D6 compatibility guideline that outlines compatibility considerations for sensitive uses and proposed industrial uses. So there's 3 classes of industrial uses in the D6 guidelines, and each one of these buffers, it's hard to see the buffer areas, but the yellow is the 300-meter buffer. So within the 300-meter buffer area, a class 3 or a major industrial use would not be permitted unless, of course, they undertake a D6 study. The other sensitive use buffers are 70 meters for class 2, which is sort of a medium type industrial use, and then a class 1 has a 30-meter buffer. So it's really only that 300-meter buffer that really impacts the lands. There's also some sites of archaeological potential, and that's these brown areas here at the front of the property and sort of towards the rear of the development. And those have, from what I understand, have undergone up to a stage 3 archaeological assessment. For any potential development to occur within those lands, it would require further archaeological investigation, potentially up to a stage 4. So those lands would be at the onset restricted for development unless through a holding provision, unless a proponent undertook an archaeological assessment to remove those lands from that area to the satisfaction of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. So the amendment is really to recognize that there's been changes to the economy, specifically the town, and being the proponent is interested in providing lands for knowledge-based economic drivers, as well as traditional industrial sectors, such as which are currently permitted in the employment designation. So they're more more your traditional industrial type uses. So the exception is really a distinct category within the employment designation, and it would be applicable to this site. So it's a site-specific exception with outline a sort of a principle of use that's more aligned with business park type uses and those types of uses that are more aligned with the way the economy is shifting in general lately, and that is, of course, recognizing knowledge-based sectors, research and technology, conferencing, education, and training as being core components of a future economic direction for the town. And there's also within the exception guidance to require high quality architectural design and landscaping for the lands at the front of the property along concession 6. So there's an interest in maintaining compatibility with the surrounding lands and integrating nicely within that corridor. Again, those are factors to consider within the proposed exception to the employment designation. So moving on, the business park zone, which I had outlined earlier, it would permit a variety of permitted uses. Again, facilities for education, training, and development, conference centers, data and research, as well as some commercial uses that are sort of accessory to a business. So recognizing their businesses require some flexibility in how they operate within a business park, and allowing some sales within that business park or some scale of storefront is what's proposed. There's special holding provisions, as I sort of outlined, for the archaeological potential areas, as well as a requirement for site plan control. So that's an extra process in the planning process before a building permit is issued, and that gives council an opportunity to ensure that the lands are developed in a way that's compatible and sort of consistent with the vision for this particular business park. Again, with particular focus on the front and along concession 6. And the D6 compatibility study would be required. Again, there's that 300-meter buffer. So the province outlines these sort of hard buffers, 300 meters. However, there is an opportunity through mitigation measures to decrease that buffer if a compatibility study is determined and offers mitigation factors that would mitigate against noise, odor, vibration, and dust. That's the primary focus of the D6 study. So that's not always required, but may be required if it's a class 3 type industry within the 300-meter buffer. So just going through some of the planning considerations, I'll very briefly run through these. These are the sort of core or primary planning considerations for council to consider, but I'll start out with the need for these lands. Employment lands hold a particular focus or particular type of employment, typically more higher order employment that drives population growth, as opposed to population-centered growth that responds to population growth. So these lands are really critical to the town's future development. The county is undertaking right now a study called Plan the Bruce Good Growth, and it's a growth management strategy for for the next 25 years for the county and its lower tier municipalities within the county. And the study, although it's in draft format or interim format right now, has identified a need within the town for approximately 16 hectares of employment lands in order to meet the town's future population, which is projected through the county growth management strategy to be approximately 20,800 in 2046, with a working population of just shy of 6,900. So all those employees need have a footprint, and right now the town has a deficiency and is unable to accommodate those future workers. County planning staff also did an inventory of current employment lands on a parcel by parcel basis a couple years ago, and concluded there's very few developable parcels that are vacant in the near term. I believe there's only about 4.4 hectares of developable land. The town also lacks a mix of sizes in the employment designation. Of that 4.4 hectares, only one is greater than 1 hectare in size. So there's some land available, but they're very small parcels. And of what is available, again, very small parcels that would likely require reconfiguration in order to make them into larger parcels. So I'll go into the next planning consideration, that's compatibility. And as I noted, there is a guideline for that through the province. The MHBC report accounted for that, and the way the zoning is structured is that no heavy sort of industrial uses or class 3 industrial uses would be permitted within 300 meters of sensitive use, unless, of course, they complete a D6 compatibility guideline or compatibility study through the site plan control process. Servicing is by water. The MHBC report concluded that, municipal water is relatively easily extended to the site, whereas sewer would be a little more challenging to extend. As I noted, there's the closest connection, I believe, is about half a kilometer away. So sort of a great expense to develop, at least in the initial phases, to have full servicing extended, but it is perhaps an option later on. Traffic, the municipality is undertaking a traffic impact assessment. I understand Mr. Posner may be able to provide more information on its status, but it's not yet concluded. Typically, a traffic impact assessment would determine if there's a need for upgrades to the local road network. It's not anticipated, at least with phase 1, that there would be any sort of traffic infrastructure improvements on concession 6. However, as I noted, that traffic impact assessment is forthcoming and will likely be available in the near future. Landscaping and buffering, again, those have been included as provisions in the zoning bylaw, particularly along concession 6, to require enhanced buffering and landscaping for those lands. And the cultural heritage considerations I also touched on with respect to the archaeological potential lands and placing a holding provision on those. So by the date of submission for the report, no comments were received. I did speak to a couple people on the phone. They did indicate sort of an interest in the application, but did not submit comments. I understand there's some members of the public wishing to participate in the process this evening, so those comments will be noted through this process. And of course, we're not making a decision tonight. So it's an opportunity to reflect on those comments. And just to recap, it's an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment to develop a business park on the lands. The proposed OPA would redesignate the lands to employment exception, and the zoning bylaw would create a new zone called the business park zone with special provisions for site plan control, compatibility, and archaeological resources. So the recommendation for this evening is that the report be received for information, and we hear from the public. So that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you, Daniel. Are there, does anybody, Jay or anybody wish to speak on behalf of the proponent?
No, I just want to, I guess, conclude by emphasizing that we are here really for the public to provide their information to us. If they have questions or comments that we can't answer tonight, but can answer over the next, before we present the final report, that's the purpose. And I think Dan did a really concise, comprehensive review of what the proposal is. So I don't need to go into detail there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll open the meeting up to members of the public who wish to address the committee. And the first one is Amber Harrington. And we'll bring Ms. Harrington into the meeting. There you are. Good evening. There's Joan too. So good evening to you both. And the floor is yours.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Council members, staff, and Mr. Kingsbury. Thank you for taking the time to hear me speak this evening. My name is Amber Harrington. Beside me is my grandmother, Joan Johnson, who owns the property I live on and will be speaking in relationship to tonight. I'm a 20-year resident of 239 Concession 6. To put my location in context, my property road frontage is on the south side of Concession 6 and faces the proposed development area from the west edge of proposed Site 13 through the west boundary of Site 11. My main driveway is in front of Site 11, and our second driveway, used mainly for agricultural purposes, faces the dividing line between Sites 17 and 13. I'm a registered nurse who works full-time shift work. I have 2 children, 2 German Shepherd dogs, and we keep horses and cattle on our property. This rural home is the only home my children have ever known, and the proposed development will bring many changes to the way we experience our home. It has always been the best of both worlds for us. A quiet rural life just a few minutes from town, but the development will certainly create changes to that. I'm here to outline a few concerns that I have about the development in the neighborhood with respect to road safety, noise and light pollution, potential environmental impacts on the area, and impacts on human and wildlife residents. Concession 6 is a busy road that accommodates a large variety of users and a good portion of the traffic that is entering, exiting, and bypassing Port Elgin. Routine users of this road include passenger vehicles, motorcycles, aggregate extraction traffic, transportation trucks, farm vehicles, horse and buggies, school buses, ATVs, snowmobiles, cyclists, pedestrian traffic, and horseback riders. My family personally uses the road as motorists, pedestrians, cyclists, and horseback riders. Excuse me. Concession 6 provides multiple access points to multi-use trails, and I expect it will certainly see further increases in traffic counts from both directions with the addition of the Lamont Sports Park, as well as the proposed development. Concession 6 has a rolling topography with numerous curves. It has narrow shoulders with steep ditches in some areas, steep or narrow shoulders in others, and almost no shoulder in the valley leading east to west down to the Concession 6 bridge over Mill Creek. The bridge itself has no shoulder. Within the valley of Mill Creek, there is nowhere safe to stop or pull over in case of emergency or vehicle failure. This also means there is no room for multi-purpose users to move over away from vehicular traffic. This is true for both directions of travel. Attention to how shoulders could be built up, leveled, or graded in some areas would help with this and provide more room and safety for non-vehicle road users. With this in mind, the speed limit is of great concern to me on this stretch of road. The rolling topography and curvature of the road creates many areas of poor visibility. As someone who routinely turns on and off the road between the proposed East Road entry and the potential driveways for sites 11 and 12, I know there is a blind spot in the road in front of my driveway. The topography is such that when turning in or out, there are spots for approaching vehicles to be invisible on the road from both directions into the areas for the intended driveways. As an example, if I turn off concession 6 right into my driveway, if the vehicle behind me pulls across the solid line to pass, even by a small amount, they are not visible to oncoming traffic, nor can they see there is oncoming traffic until they are in their path. Larger vehicles are somewhat easier to see, but smaller vehicles are hidden in the down slopes on either side of the hill crest right in front of my home. This affects the area where the east roadway and the potential driveway for sites 12 and 11 would be. Currently, before I exit my driveway, I have to wait and leave enough time to watch a good distance away to the visible areas of the road for approaching traffic and to allow hidden vehicles to crest the hill from both directions to ensure I do not pull out in front of oncoming traffic. This is an issue of varying degrees for all the current residential driveways. A reduction of speed to the proposed 60 kilometers an hour is already desirable for our safety, but with increased traffic, especially large vehicles to support construction and industry, this becomes even more important to evaluate. 50 kilometers an hour may be more appropriate given the number of entrances in close proximity that may eventually be on the road, particularly given the types of users on the road. Many of them would suffer irreparable harm if hit by a vehicle of any size. Another safety concern during the winter months is the frequent development of black ice on the roadway in front of my property. This section between the proposed east entrance and lots 11 and 12 can be extremely icy, making slowing down and stopping difficult at times. Despite knowing this and decelerating early on, I still manage to slide by my own driveway several times each winter because it does not appear icy until you apply your brakes. There have been accidents in this area before. I would also like to bring up that there are 2 school bus stops within the proposed boundaries set out to contain the access road and driveways, one in front of site 17 and my own child stop in front of site 11. One more within the protected area headed east down the valley, and one at the base of the bridge on the far side for a total of 4 stops within less than 1 kilometer. A reduction in speed, combined with postings of appropriate signage for bus stops, hidden driveways, trucks entering the road, multi-purpose road users, and no passing signs would greatly improve the safety of all the residents and road users in this area and reduce the potential for accidents, as would decreasing the speed limit sooner rather than later to help people adjust before the traffic volumes rise. As a resident, I would prefer to see sites 12, 13, and 17 connected directly to the internal roadway over connecting right to concession 6, as this would reduce the number of points of entry to the roadway along our frontage and alleviate some of my concerns over visibility and road safety. Living in such close proximity to the proposed development raises some concerns for residents around the noise created by traffic, construction, and the sounds of the industries themselves over the long term. Due to the topography of the land, everything echoes in this area, and the current noise pollution from traffic and airplanes, due to the area being under the fly zone for the Port Elgin Airport, is already substantial at times. We would prefer that businesses located closer to the road have the least possible amount of noise pollution, and that consideration be given to how noise will echo in the area and what measures can be taken to mitigate that noise during all phases of construction and future operations. Lighting for the development would ideally be designed to keep light reflecting only in the needed areas, pointed down to the ground and not shining towards the current residences or up into the air to distract birds. The addition of vehicles turning onto the roadway after dark also creates ongoing light pollution to any residences within range of headlights and will cause light to cross our homes in a way that we are not used to. With regards to environmental concerns, The preservation of the current areas of hedgerow are important to me as a resident. The sugar maples are old growth and are used by birds and other animals routinely. Preservation of the cottonwood stands in particular would help to reduce the visibility of the development from the properties on the south side of the road, and appropriate landscaping and planting of evergreen trees or hedges to further create a visual barrier would be most welcomed. The addition of 17 potential septic systems into the area would require some oversight to ensure they are built and maintained properly to prevent any contamination to the groundwater in the future. I also wonder how the salt spread on the internal roadway in winter will affect the area and if it will make its way into the stormwater collection pond and where it might go from there. The proposal does indicate that considerations will be given to preventing garbage from being able to drift across the property and into surrounding areas through the use of fencing. This is important to us because we are environmentally conscious people who already spend time picking up garbage thrown from passing vehicles and expect that there will be an increase with more cars, let alone with 17 potential businesses opening across the road. The preliminary wildlife study does not include several species that are active within the general area. Raccoons use those sugar maple trees to hide their babies while foraging. Canada geese use the current agricultural field to rest and feed before migration in the fall, and they return to that field to rest upon their arrival in the spring. Wild turkeys often pass through this field as well and nest in the bordering woodlands and fields on both sides of Concession 6. Turtles come up out of the creek to nest, and we find several in our yard each year, indicating that they are very mobile given the distance of my property to the creek. Coyotes are mentioned in the report, and I wish to express that they are very active along the Mill Creek corridor and on the lands on both sides of the road. I would also just like to mention that there is a good sized group of barn swallows in my barn and very likely in other barns nearby as well. They are not likely on the proposed development lands, but they are close by and using the natural space to sustain themselves. The safety of all animals on the road is of concern to me, and the increased traffic will only result in more deaths. Currently, there are numerous rabbits, raccoons, cats, and dogs killed by vehicles on this stretch of road, and in particular on the bridge every year. A reduction in speed from the current 40-kilometer zone near Highway 21 through to side road 1314, as well as appropriate signage, would help significantly in mitigating these unnecessary deaths and hopefully not see the numbers rise. In closing, as a long-term resident, I would generally prefer that it was not my neighborhood being affected. However, I understand the need to create places for businesses to operate in order for Saugeen Shores to continue to grow, and I can appreciate the limited lands available for this type of development within our town. Having said that, this development will greatly change the way we experience our rural homes, and attention to our concerns would go a long way to helping us be welcoming to new neighbors. Indeed, we hope that we too might have potential to benefit from the project with the extension of town water and improved telecommunication services so close to our home. Thank you for your time this evening and taking my concerns into consideration when making decisions to move forward with the project.
Thank you, Ms. Harrington. Ms. Johnson, do you have comments that you wanted to make?
He said you have comments that you want to make.
Oh, I think Amber covered them all.
Okay, good enough. Well, I just thank you very much. That was
Very busy.
Pardon me, sorry. I
do find the road very busy. I think she's covered them all.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. We much appreciated all your comments. Very well put. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that'll move us on then to our next member of the public who wishes to speak to us, and that's Bill Pym. Mr. Pym. We see you there, Mr. Pym, and I just need you to unmute. And there you are.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Your planner alleviated most of my concerns with this talk. It was mainly the sewer component to the development. So my question is, if the existing industrial land, or if it can be serviced with septic systems, will you ever need to put a sewage system in there?
Is there somebody who wants to address Mr. Pym's question? Jay?
Oh, well, just generally that septic systems on their own are certainly sufficient as a technical solution to provide the interim servicing. But if we want to maximize the potential for the lands, having less area devoted to underground waste management for individual businesses will mean more land available for other businesses or expanded businesses or so on. And so I think there is a potential future where having municipally managed sanitary management would ensure the park could be expanded or otherwise improved.
Right. My question was, though, with the septic system, it certainly curtails some types of businesses that would be able to move into the park, and putting the septic system or the sewage system in might expand the type of businesses that could locate there. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, sorry, I couldn't find mute, but yes, that's correct. That certainly there is I think a market limitation for the types of businesses that would want to put septic in, but for the moment, in the conversations we've had with businesses and others that might be locating here and through the MHPC report, there's still a significant business investment opportunity at this property.
Right. I live on the north end of the development. My property backs onto the pit, and myself and my neighbors weren't aware that this change of use was in the works till we got the notification from the county. That's all. So we were just wondering. One, I couldn't tell where the industrial land was going to be, located on the site. So fact that it's down, I didn't want it behind my property. I mean, no one wants it on their property or in front of their property, but I take it the recreational land will be bordering the rail trail. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's the proposal is excuse me, Mr. Mayor, for the rec lands to be along the western, 2/3 of the property, and we'll have direct access to the rail trail.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great use of that land. I think it'll look great. Soccer fields. So, and I understand the problem with not having enough access to industrial land for the town development. But do you think that the 36 hectares is enough for recreational use for all purposes? Trails, soccer fields, ball diamonds, any other facilities that might go in there? And I could be wrong. The numbers that I seem to get from your website, 51 hectares usable, 29 pit, 22 agricultural, and 12 environmentally challenged. Is that correct?
Oh, okay. Well, off the top of my head, excuse me, I don't have that data. I mean, I only have info on the employment lands. We're looking at just a.
Yeah, no, I appreciate 14. That. Yeah,
and I don't sorry. For the rec lands, I'd have to defer to community services. I'm not fully up to date on the scope of the project, or nor is there an expectation that all recreation services are to be located there. It's just a outdoor recreation facility with ball diamonds and other features, and that's as far as I know at the moment.
Yeah.
As it so happens, we do have the Director of Community Services here. Maybe she can give us a few words to answer the question.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to answer your question, Mr. Pym, I believe the question was, is there enough lands there to accommodate the outdoor recreation amenities? And we've worked through a number of drawings and with consultants to develop a fine concept drawing within that area, and construction has started. Happy to share with you those drawings, and they will accommodate our future ball needs in that vicinity and potentially other opportunities for recreation pursuits in that area as well.
Right. There was some talk of a YMCA complex going in there and walking trails and whatever.
And thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. It is not proposed at that location. We're only looking at an outdoor
Oh, I
recreation
see.
complex.
I wasn't sure. I mean, it's just stuff I read.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really don't have any negative things to say. I think it's a great project, and I think it'll be good use of the land.
Great.
I just had some questions about the sewage, and no one really knew the answer, but I think most of my concerns were addressed tonight. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Well, if you have any questions going forward, I'm sure Saugeen Shore staff or Mr. Kingsbury will be able to address them for you if you just communicate with them. But thank you for your comments.
All right. Thanks.
All right. So that moves us on to the third member of the public, Ms. Heather Porter. Ms. Porter. Are you there, Heather?
I am here.
There
I are.
Good evening.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to read my notes, try and get through this as quick as I can. And through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks for the time to state my opinion. I am actually not in favor of this idea. I feel we should generally maintain a business corridor on Highway 21 north and south of the town, retail and commercial on the highway, industrial manufacturing on the second blocks, and residential and mixed use beyond that, much like what we've been doing. I'm sure that more acreage that is more suited for business development will come available. I think the town needs to provide easy rezoning and severance of land along the highway so that those property owners have an easier path to provide lots and opportunities for future businesses. As a business owner, I would want to be accessible and visible to my customers and clients, and good planning is critical to making that happen. A week ago, you proposed, or your council proposed, changing zoning laws to allow 6-story apartment buildings. But I don't know anyone who wants a 6-story building built on the lot next to them in a subdivision or a current residential neighborhood. We have, as a community, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something new and different on this special 35-acre riverfront property in a rural setting, close to town, and owned by the taxpayers. For the last year, I've watched many council meetings, and if I've heard it loud and clear, you say you want affordable, attainable housing in Saugeen Shores. So do I. And here is our opportunity to walk that talk. My vision for the Lamont 35 acres, if we have to do something, would be to create a neighborhood of mixed housing, which the county and the provincial policy statement keep telling us that we need. This could include your 6-story apartment building with the first floor commercial and retail space, maybe even a space for a semi-retired doctor to open a little practice, a hairdresser, flexible daycare, after-school program. The possibilities are endless. It could also contain some townhouse rental or owned units that were accessible and affordable for people in their retirement. We could make it easier for residents there to have golf carts and scooters that they can take on the trails that already exist to shop with or to go along the trails to the neighboring golf course. People like to live near where they work and play. Residents at this neighborhood would be able to afford to walk to their ball games or their kids' games. Grandparents and elders would have easy access to the park to watch the games. Trails could be created along Mill Creek for people to enjoy. And high school kids could bike to school on the rail trail, and public school kids can always be bused. There are a lot of people who work full-time but cannot afford, or they may not want to afford, a $600,000 mortgage in town or $1,500 or more monthly rent. With affordable housing, they can afford to put their kids in ball and hockey or buy the fishing pole and let them fish right there in Mill Creek. I feel like we need to do this right. Let's reach out to find inspired developers who can create a self-contained housing project with a real vision for the future. When I reached out to my counselor about your plan, I was told that there was no long-range plan for housing out there. And I'm not sure I believe that. I would totally expect that there are lots to be developed east of the West Links Golf Course, and I would see that as an obvious assumption long-term. When you build a golf course or ball diamonds, they're usually surrounded by residents, not by businesses. If the sewer is the only hurdle, I'm absolutely positive that there is a solution to that. That's something that can be explored, and a developer with a vision can make anything happen. As far as I've seen, there have been no attempt to even consider other options here. There could have been green energy solutions, a community garden, who knows what else. I feel that this has been proposed and accepted with very little knowledge and input of the community. And what we've heard about is the sports park, not the business park. And to avoid another situation like the beach development currently happening, I think it's imperative that you hold more public consultation about this proposal before you go any further and incur extra cost in applications. Maybe I'm wrong, but I hope that by bringing it up at a public meeting and hopefully getting some traction in the local media, people will start to think about what that 35 acres could be. When I read your presentation for tonight that there had been no public comments, I tried to look back and see when that could have happened, because I must have missed that memo. I found nothing. Last week, Councillor Grace mentioned that having one public notice in the paper isn't sufficient when it comes to getting feedback from the community. And when it comes to important and costly issues, I couldn't agree more. This is our taxpayer money you're investing, and there is an increasing need for a ratepayers association to be started in order to keep track of all the different spending avenues that the town is pursuing. Everyone gets involved in their singular cases, but no one is overseeing all the multiple huge spending directions we are going in. There are a lot of people that think we're growing a little too fast for our resources. And if you're truly interested in good growth, there has to be more public input. People are busy, they're working and raising families, and these things seem to get passed by council. And after the fact, people realize, they should have said something. They had no idea it was even happening. I couldn't in good conscience not say something when I think we're squandering a perfect opportunity to do something bold and innovative rather than something just average. I do thank you for your time. I hope you'll reconsider moving forward with your proposal at this time. I think we have lots of time to develop that farmland into something great. I do have one request, and if I don't know how to get this, but I would love a list of all the properties around town that we own as taxpayers. And then I can, I go through the interactive mapping, I try and find all the properties and see where we could put sustainable housing or affordable housing. But when this came up, and it was only a couple of months ago, I heard it for the first time when you mentioned the business park. That was the first I'd heard of it too. And I thought, I don't like it. I don't like the idea that we're using rural, awesome property that's riverfront. I mean, people die for property that's got any water in it. And it's such a great opportunity to look at other options other than just an industrial park or a business park. I'm not against a business plan to expand businesses. I'm just thinking that this is not the right place. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. And I would just say to your question about municipally owned property, one of the recommendations of the Affordable Housing Task Force was for the municipality to produce an inventory. I mean, we do have an inventory of our properties, but to discuss that inventory in the context of providing affordable housing. And so I think you can anticipate that there will be some public discussion about that, and that those properties that the people of Saugeen Shores own, that will eventually, and perhaps in relatively short order, be a listing of them that you'll be able to see as part of that discussion. Hopefully sooner than later, because we'd really like to be able to move that part of the affordable housing discussion forward. Okay, so thank you very much, Ms. Porter. We appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
And that moves on to the final member of the public who wishes to address us this evening, and that's June Sinfeld. We have Ms. Sinfeld. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. It might be Sinfield. Hopefully she'll correct me. There you are. Ms. Sinfield, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that most of my questions were answered during the presentation. I reside at lot 11, which is right across the road from this proposed park. And we did not know anything about this until we received the letter in the mail 2 weeks ago. I'd like to reiterate everything that Amber Harrington said. I'm not going to repeat it just because of the length of time that we've been discussing this. And she did make all the valid points that I wanted to make. The traffic is going to be horrendous. When they did the bridge renovation on concession 8 and they detoured the traffic to concession 6, it was like a main highway with all the traffic. The road is not constructed for all this traffic. As Amber said, the shoulders are narrow, there's deep ditches. There isn't very good visibility. And now with an industrial park going in there, there will probably be a lot of heavy traffic, trucks, basically bringing in supplies and taking out product. We definitely do need a speed reduction in this area if that park goes into production. That's basically most of what I had to say. Like I say, Amber made a lot of valid points, and I just like to say that I really am not in favor of this park, industrial being there right across from my home. It's nice and quiet here at present. It will be noisy. We noticed all the noise and upheaval when the detour went through in this area. So that is all that I would like to say at this time.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. All right, so that is the last member of the public who asked to address us this evening. So we will now turn it over to members of the committee for questions or clarification. Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd just like to thank all 4 presenters. I think there's some very, some very good points with all the presentations. Some very valid points, and I was particularly drawn to Amber Harrington's comments. I thought it was very well articulated, and she, I think there's some concerns, and the same concerns I have in terms of the road system, and I guess the speed limit, and wouldn't hurt my feelings at all if a 40-kilometer zone was the end result on concession 6. There's going to be a lot more traffic with the business park and the Lamont Sports Park, no question about that. It's going to be it's a busy road now, and it's going to become a whole lot busier. And Jay, I just wondering if you could answer this question for me, or whether it's an Amanda question, but I think Dan Kingsbury mentioned about road changes potentially, that may have to happen, but the traffic impact assessment, I think, for this area is going to be really, really important. I have had some concerns about blind spots on that road, and I know the residents in the area do have concerns about blind spots. I think that's real, and I just wonder about the traffic impact assessment, Jay. Will it address those kinds of things? I see Amanda just came on. Will it address those kinds of things about the potential, the blind spots, the 40-kilometer zone versus 60? I like a 40 with all the traffic that's going to end up there. So what will the traffic impact assessment tell us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the traffic impact study can tell us whatever we ask it to tell us. So it would typically look at speed limits, left turn lanes. It would look at the intersection at the highway and concession 6 to see if there's any improvements needed based on the traffic flow here. It'll also take a look at sight lines, and then sight lines are one of the things that are used to dictate the speed limit as well. We can take into account that recommendation about the driveways and ask them to specifically look at reducing the number of driveways on concession 6 if that makes a difference as well. So all of that can be added in.
Thank you, Amanda. And I heard Ms. Harrington talk about reducing the number of driveways. And so I think there's some very valid, I mean, we can't get into all the points you raised this evening, but it's going to go on record and planners will be considering. But I just wondering, Dan Kingsbury, on slide 3, I think it was, page 3 of your report this evening. Is it correct there? Am I looking at two entranceways then, Dan? Like one into the Lamont's? Are there 2 entrances going into the business park, Dan? Or am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen here. So this is a proposed concept plan for the lands. It's not necessarily what's being put forward, but MHBC did conclude that the most economic, I guess, advantageous layout would be an internal loop road with 2 entrances on concession 6.
So, and then the third one, yeah, I know we're not really here to speak about Lamont Sports Park, but then there's a third entranceway, correct? So up into the Lamont Sports Park, so 3 entrances in total in that short stretch?
Yeah, that's correct. If you include the Lamont Sports Park, yep, that would be 3.
I think that's one of Ms. Harrington's suggestions. I'm looking forward to that traffic impact assessment, and I hope that, you know, it'd be nice to see a 40 kilometer zone through there. It's going to be extremely busy. We all know that. But I again just want to thank all the presenters this evening, Mr. Mayor. There were some very valid points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there further comments? Sorry, I can't see everybody now. There we go. All right, well, quite a few. We'll start with Councillor Smith and work our way around here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for the second week in a row, we've heard mention of a lacking notification by members of our public. And I'm wondering, I know Dan has commented in the past that there's a minimum legislative requirement in terms of what we are required to notify public members about. And often we go above and beyond that. But I share in Councillor Grace's concerns from last week that the minimum level of effort may not be enough. And I'm wondering if we have any internal standards that speak to what notifications are required for members of the public and public meetings that maybe go beyond the provincial legislative requirement.
Dan or Jay?
Yeah, this one, I was going to say, I'll defer to Dan on the planning related because I think it's better for that. But when it comes to this sort of thing, I don't mind answering because the minimum in this case is to circulate all landowners within 400 feet, I think. And Dan can correct me if I'm wrong on that part. But in this case, we also, in all of the cases where there's a bit of a judgment call, and this one, as well as the general amendment from last week, we publish it on our website and use the push notifications through the news item so that people that want to be informed and get information from the town can get that information. We use the communication strategy to guide it. I should have led with that, but we use that strategy to guide us on these types of applications. And so like on the housing amendment, the minimum legislative would be published in the Shoreline Beacon, but we go above that. We went to the Saugeen Times. We published on our own website using the push notification. And then we're also, over the next few weeks, using our social media to push that out as well. So just 2 examples. That recent ones, obviously, I'm old enough and done planning long enough, and I'm sure Dan can repeat this, is that it's a common refrain to hear about residents not knowing what is going on. And so we constantly are trying to reevaluate and understand and recontextualize how we communicate. I'll only mention the podcast because it was a new way of doing it, because it was another way we could communicate what's going on. Now, maybe a podcast on the Lamont Business Park wouldn't have made sense, but we, that's also something that's in our toolbox as well.
Dan, did you have anything to add, or does that cover it?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that essentially covers it. We do follow the Planning Act requirements at a minimum, which of course Jay mentioned 400 feet. I'm not sure what that is in meters, but the Planning Act says every property that borders the land, so that would be the entire Lamont pit area, the 65 hectare park, every property within 120 meters would receive notice of the meeting and of the proposal at least 20 days before the meeting is held.
Okay. All right. Councilor Griggs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions for Dan. Dan, talking about all of the comments tonight, which for public comments, which were excellent. I wonder if it'd be possible for you to ask those individuals if we could get a written copy, particularly the longer ones. It would help me to assess their comments. It would be very helpful to have a written form of those. So I wonder if that's possible to request that. My other question is specifically about the D6 assessment for the site plan control application for the class 3 industrial facilities needing a 300 meter buffer, but they could possibly have that buffer space reduced if they put in specific mitigation measures. Could you give us some examples of what those kind of mitigation measures might be?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's right. The province has a blanket buffer area of 300 meters. The D6 is primarily concerned with noise, odor, vibration, and dust emissions from a business. So I'm just reading from the MHBC report. A class 3 industrial facility is a place of business for large-scale manufacturing or processing, characterized by large physical size, outdoor storage of raw and finished products, large production volumes, and continuous movement of products and employees during daily shift operations. It has frequent outputs of major annoyance, and there is a high probability of fugitive emissions. So I'm not sure exactly what mitigation measures might be deployed. I think it's very context specific relative to the proposed industry that's potentially to be sited on a location, but some measures may include landscaping, enhanced mechanical systems to capture fugitive emissions, vibration dampening measures, potentially protocols around periods of time when they can operate and do certain activities. So these would be examples of potential mitigation measures, but again, it's very, very site or context specific to the proposed use.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I saw Councilor Mayette.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And once again, thanks to the presenters. They were well prepared. I think we find ourselves sometimes getting a little ahead of ourselves talking about speed limit reductions when it's just at a conceptual stage at this point. I think is way premature. Certainly, I'm well familiar with this road. I drive it practically every day, and I don't think that the sight lines are as bad as perhaps they were made out. That said, I particularly liked Heather's comments about the alternate uses for the site and the consideration for building housing in an area like this. We don't have any public areas in the town that are suitable for housing. And I think that I wasn't pleased with the idea before, and I'll reiterate that I would like to see a reconsideration to zoning this as potential residential development rather than industrial. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there further comments from members of the committee? I don't see any, so I'll just reiterate that this presentation this evening has been for the purpose of collecting public comment. And Daniel, would you just remind the public if they do have comments that they would like to make or would like further information about this project as it makes its way through the planning process, how they can get that?
Yes, of course, through you, Mr. Mayor. If anyone's interested in obtaining information, they can email, or providing comments, I should say, they can email the Lakeshore Planning Hub office at bcple@brucecounty.on.ca, or they can visit the Bruce County Planning website under land use planning and then Saugeen Shores applications, and they can find this one, and all the contact information is there as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. That concludes this public meeting, and we will move on in the agenda. So that moves us on to item number 7, reports of municipal officers and committees, and 7.2, a general government report, which is a staff report on sponsorship for the Ontario Tankard event, and the Director of Community Services. Oh, no, sorry, Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Before you, there is a request that Council approve waiving $5,000 of the rental fees for the 2022 Ontario Men's Curling Championship, and that these funds be used for a gold level sponsorship. This event will have a significant impact to the Saugeen Shores community, and support of this event is seen as an opportunity to grow our four-season tourism destination potential. Staff have currently estimated that before the waiving of the fees, the town will have a net positive income of about $10,500. And once we take away the $5,000, that still leaves the town with a potential $5,500 positive income to the town. At this time, I will take any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll read the recommendation and we can take questions or comments. It's recommended that council approve waiving $5,000 of the rental fees for the 2022 Ontario Men's Curling Championship, and that these fees be used for gold level sponsorship. Questions or comments from members of the committee? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I think this is a good idea. Last year, we were looking to help out Rotary when they were going to be hosting the Rotary International. It's been a long time since we've hosted a championship level tournament like this, so I will wholly support, and if needed, I will put the motion forward that we do accept this and put the $5,000 forward for the gold sponsorship.
Thank you. We have the recommendation on the floor, so we can consider that. Is there any other questions or comments? I don't see any, so I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay. That moves us then on to infrastructure and development, and a staff report for site plan 2806783 Ontario Limited 1230 Wellington Street, and the supervisory development services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a very brief statement. This site plan for about a 5,000 square, almost 6,000 square foot addition for the automobile body servicing shop to be located at 1230 Wellington Street. And they've provided all the information we needed to consider the site plan application. They're comply with the zoning bylaw. And so we're asking that you recommend entering into the agreement with the company.
Okay, thank you. We do have a recommendation that council pass a bylaw to authorize a site plan agreement with 2806783 Ontario Limited, and that council authorize the Director, Infrastructure Development Services to approve subsequent site plans associated with the subject lands, provided the site plans are in general conformity with the overall site plan, are consistent with the town's development guide, and compliant with the town's zoning bylaw. Questions or comments to the recommendation, the Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Jay, is this the final hurdle that the developers need to go forward, or will it have to come back to council again? I know they're in a tight building process, and if it's required to come back, I'd probably make a different motion. So could you give me an update on that, please?
Yeah, well, the normal process is that this is a recommendation from committee of the whole. It would need to go to bylaw. There are things that they still need to do to make sure they get their building permit. They can do site preparation. They can do a lot of things in the intervening period. But however, if you and council want to entertain a different motion, that is entirely your call, of course.
A bylaw, though, is required.
A bylaw is eventually, at least for this, is required to be passed to enter into this agreement.
And we don't have a bylaw tonight, correct?
I don't have one, but it would be, I could try if you wanted to draft something that would, it's a fairly standard bylaw.
I think that, I think in this case, we need a bylaw. Council needs time to read a bylaw and consider it. So I think, we can only move so quickly. We put this forward tonight, and then it would come forward to council at the earliest possible opportunity, I'm sure. Are there further questions or comments to the recommendation? I don't see any, so all in favor? That's carried. All right, that moves us then on to a staff report, floodline hazard assessment report, and the Director of Infrastructure and Development.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The SVCA has identified a concern with the current floodline hazard line on their mapping. It shows the high lake level and the impacts that line represents where they believe impacts of that water would happen along the shoreline on development. They've asked that this line be engineered for the CCV permit approval. However, this is an exercise that we would be able to use on many other projects along that shoreline. And it is above what we feel is the responsibility of the CCV project alone to engineer the entire floodline hazard. As the person or the entity that would benefit the most by having the most projects along the shoreline that could benefit from this analysis, we feel that it is appropriate that the town pay for the model. We'll be using it for a CCV, North Shore Road, Saugeen Beach Road, the Green Street parking lot, the Flag at Southampton, and Harbor Street projects in the future. The only thing that would be needed to further those projects then would be for this consultant to run a single cross-section at those lines. It would make that process faster, and then it would also help us get the permits for those projects.
Okay, we have a recommendation. I'll read it, then we can take questions or comments. It's recommended that council authorize Shore Plan Engineering Limited to carry out the floodline hazard assessment in accordance with the SBCA comments, with a fee estimate of $13,000 plus applicable taxes to be funded from the prior year capital reserve. Questions or comments to the recommendation? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I know there's probably some question, why should we have to pay this amount? And the goalposts kind of keep moving, maybe with SVCA on the development along the waterfront. I'd rather like the idea of this document being able to be used in the future. SVCA is going to be requiring it anyways, but it sounds about along our entire shoreline. And our Director of Infrastructure is outlined that this report will be put to good use for future projects. And I know there's probably some sense, well, why us? Why should we have to do this? Why is SVCA requiring it? But they are, and we can fight it if we wish. But I'm not sure what that would do in terms of what value we would gain from opposing this study. I just think it's good planning. It's something our Public Works Director of Infrastructure can use in the future, and thought about it long and hard about this one, and I just think it's money well spent, seeing that we can put it to good use.
Okay, thank you. I saw Councillor Mayette.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question. So the historical data that SCVA has relied on for presumably since their inception, which relied on sort of the Hurricane Hazel data from 1950, before my time. Maybe Mike remembers. So they're saying that, just to be clear, they're saying that data is no longer considered sufficient or no longer considered valid, that they want to use new updated data on a go forward basis. Is that what we're being told, or is that what we're assuming they're telling us?
Thank you for that question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The work that has been done in the past has worked on a model done by M&R, and it was for data up until 1980. What the SPCA has asked is that we take the last 32 years into account and check that model against this new data and see if the lake levels stay the same. So where we see this engineering request happen more often is in the rivers, and then they redo the floodline mapping. I don't know if you remember, for probably 3 or 4 years ago, we came back and we're talking to the SPCA about updating floodline mapping throughout it, and they require municipalities to pay for it when they're doing it down there. At that time, it would have been the same data, the 1980 MNR, but now this new data is a new request to check that floodline for to what they're considering as today's conditions.
All right, so the fluctuations for the past 36 or so years have not been taken into account, but will this report then give us an idea whether or not the patterns will stay the same or the patterns are getting more extreme? Is that what we're trying to figure out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in effect, yes. What it's going to do is give us a new line on their map along our shoreline to know where that hazard happens, but it's exactly that. And right now there's a model that shows us where the waves hit plus where the high water is and how the two interact. And this is just going to extend that data up to 2020 instead of stopping at 1980. But our consultant believes that they're very similar in how they work, or the results are going to be similar because the lake is such a cyclical nature. So
that was my last question. Was it could very well be that the data results in the same line that they used before, or very close to it.
It could, or very close.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? I just wonder, Amanda, maybe you could clarify, is it the case then, because you mentioned like this work being beneficial as far north as the flag in Southampton, did an SPCA regulations officer ask in response to the CCV application that proponent prepare a report that would cover the entire shoreline as far north as the flag in Southampton? Or are we proposing something, we're doing something different here?
The request is that they create this computer model that simulates the lake from two different weather stations, one in Tobermory and one in Goderich. So this model that they're creating could be used for any development from Goderich to Tobermory. And then they use that model, they apply their cross sections and come up with the flood line from that. So it's sort of step one in creating a wide scale model that could be used all along our shoreline.
It seems unreasonable to ask one proponent to correct the flood line for the entire shore of Lake Huron for one project. It's and it's one thing here, and I'll certainly support the recommendation this evening for $13,000. We're a municipality, we can afford these things. I'd be concerned if I was a property owner along the shoreline anywhere in SPCA territory with this recommendation, with this requirement that I want to put a addition on my house and suddenly I have to map the entire Lake Huron shoreline. That seems unreasonable. So I suppose it is what it is. We'll have to look at it and do it in this case, and I guess it will benefit our work and apparently work in northern Bruce Peninsula, South Bruce Peninsula, Kincardine, Huron-Kinloss, most of Huron County, and further south. So I suppose hopefully they'll fund the rest of us. Maybe we can write them a letter and ask for part of the $13,000. Anyway, those are my comments. Any further comments to the recommendation? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, that moves us on to Community Services, Parks and Recreation, staff report on an amendment to the Parks Bylaw 54/2019, and Director of Community Services.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, Parks Bylaw controls, regulates, protects, and governs public parks and places within our parks and recreation jurisdiction. Staff have committed to reviewing the existing parks bylaw on a regular basis to determine the impact it has for users as well as bylaw enforcement. After a thorough review process with multiple departments, it was identified that several items should be considered to ensure bylaw can enforce adequately. We anticipate the enhanced language regarding sun shelters on the beach will provide an enjoyable experience for those requiring them and eliminates tents on the beaches that can be used for multiple purposes. Staff also articulated that barbecues will not be permitted within a park except in designated areas. Therefore, this eliminates barbecues from our beaches. Staff will continue to review the parks bylaw on a regular basis to ensure it's conducive to changing trends. And finally, there is no financial impact.
Okay, thank you. We have a recommendation. The council pass a bylaw to amend the parks bylaw 54, 2019. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Pardon me. Councilor Grace. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jane. I am really happy to see these changes coming about in our amendment, in our bylaw. I know that all members of council received comments from the public about behavior particularly in our beaches during the summertime. And so I think anything we can do to clarify and support our enforcement officials is a good thing. I just have a question about how are we planning to communicate these changes to the public in the next month or so?
Yeah, certainly we can communicate through using our social media outlets as well as signage in areas where it's conducive to where we see a trend in tents and barbecues. So the Port Elgin Main Beach would be, as an example, potentially our Southampton Beach as well.
Okay, further questions or comments? I don't see any. Thank you very much for the report and the amendments, and we'll ask all in favor. That's carried. All right, that moves us on then to communications for information. Any questions or comments? Any of the petitions for information? I don't see any. So that moves us on then finally to a report of department heads and an information report update on Cedar Crescent Village lease and the Director of Protective Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The information report is in front of council. I'm happy to take any questions. As council remembers, the commencement date was set for June 9th, and it's certainly been quite a year filled with challenges in the past year, and the proponent is awaiting SPCA approval for the leased lands before proceeding, but rent has begun, and it looks most likely like a September start, or at least after the summer season would be the most likely start time for construction on that site, pending all approvals necessary.
Very good, thank you. Are there questions or comments to the information report? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Chief, thanks for the update on the CCV. It's unfortunate that these delays are holding off construction, but as a lot of people keep asking, they have made their payment. And if you look at it, they're paying almost $8,000 a month, not a year, a month, which translates to over $80,000 a year. That's a lot of money. So when they ask why, they've got a 50-year lease, you look at the money that they are investing into our waterfront and the amount that they're paying in taxes. I think this helps clarify that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, further questions or comments to the information report? Councillor Maya.
Hey, Mr. Just quickly, I think I'll reiterate what the Deputy Mayor said. I think this speaks volumes to the commitment of the proponent on the project that they've come forth and started to pay their rent, even though nothing's going to be happening on the site for the summer. So I hope when people are parking on that site that they take into account they're parking on rented land paid for by the proponents of the CCV.
Okay, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
I just want to make one comment about SPCA and this delayed start time for Cedar Crescent Village. You have to cut them a bit of slack on this one. Saugeen Valley Conservation typically is 30 to 90 days for a more complex application permit. This one will be probably 180 days plus, 3-4 months past the timing of a normal, permitting time. And, I think it's a good thing we're starting in the fall and not the summer, actually. But I just want to say from this delay's been caused with SVCA decision. We may not get, we're going to get in June, July, August, when's it forthcoming? And I just want to say, I can't pin that on the developers here. This application is taking a very long time, much longer than normal. It's a very complicated one, I suppose, from their standpoint. So I just wanted to include that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And the important thing to remember is that all the regulatory approvals are going to have to be in place. It's not going to get built without regulatory approval. Bottom line, SVCA, building permits, you name it, it's going to need them. And that's going to take the time it's going to take. And that's how these things work. And having been involved in some building projects in my life, they always take longer than you want them to. You renovate your house, it takes twice as long to do as you wanted it to take. And this is much more complicated than that, obviously. So we'll keep moving forward, and very pleased to be receiving the rents. If there's nothing further, then we can move on to the end of the agenda and announcements by members. We can do a lightning round maybe and start with the deputy mayor.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Deputy Mayor. Nothing tonight. I guess we'll go to Councillor Schreider.
No, nothing tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Nothing from me.
Really is a lightning round. Councillor Grace.
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Rich. Nothing from Councillor Rich. Councillor Mayette. Didn't even have fish to talk about tonight. All right, well, I'll round the trend out, and no comments from me. We'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Smith. All in favor? The committee stands adjourned. We'll reconvene at 9 p.m.
We have all members with the exception of Councillor Carr, so you may begin, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Linda. Then we will call to order this regular council meeting. Second item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Any member have one of those I'd like to declare? Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We next have additions, deletions, amendments. We do have one addition. There's a resolution that section 11 of the agenda be amended to add a closed to public session for the purpose of completing the closed session agenda that was held earlier this evening during the special council meeting. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Mattson, second by Rich. All in favor? Carried. Okay, then that moves us then on to adoption of the minutes, and we have the regular council minutes of May 10, 2021, committee of the whole minutes, May 10, 2021, planning committee minutes, May 17, 2021, and I have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the council meeting of May 10, 2021, and the planning committee minutes of May 17, 2021, and note and file the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of May 10, 2021 as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Grace, second by Rich. Questions or comments to any of those sets of minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. That then moves us on to reports of municipal officers and committees. And the first is a staff report on the Goddard Street emergency sanitary sewer repair. And I have a resolution that Accurate Construction Limited be authorized to complete the Goddard Street emergency sanitary sewer repair in the amount of $117,633.05 plus applicable HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary documents, and that council transfer $145,000 from the wastewater reserves to fund the emergency repair, including construction, contingency, engineering, and applicable taxes. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Vice Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Grace. Questions or comments to the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. That moves us then on to a staff report on an ice resurfacer purchase, and I have a resolution that Zamboni be awarded the contract for the 2021 ice resurfacer in the amount of $141,985 plus applicable HST. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Mayette, seconded by Schreider. Questions or comments to the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. That then moves us on to the final one, a striking committee report on the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. And I have a resolution that Odette Bartnicki and Neil Minaj be appointed to the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Gray, seconded by Smith. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. All right, then, sorry. So much paper here, I'm losing my way. Hold on a second. Okay. All right, that moves on to bylaws. Sorry, all right, I have 4 bylaws here this evening. Does anyone want to draw one out for individual consideration? Seeing none, then I will read the resolution that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 25th day of May, 2021. 1/36/2021 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with the Southampton Yacht Club. 2/37/2021 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 127/2008 to provide rules and regulations for the Port Elgin, Southampton, and Southampton Municipal Tourist Camps. 3/38/2021 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75/2006 being the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the town of Saugeen Shores by Tom Fenton for the lands described as part lot 30 Lake Range, Saugeen, town of Saugeen Shores. And 4/39/2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meetings of the corporation of the town of Saugeen Shores. Linda, should I pass the confirmatory bylaw before we do the closed session?
It will be fine, Mr. Mayor, to pass it at this point.
Okay, thank you. Is there a mover and seconder for the resolution? Moved by Rich, seconded by Schreider. Any questions or comments to that? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. All right, then we'll move on to close to public, and I have a resolution, the council moving to close to public session to discuss matters in accordance with bylaw 63/2015, section 3.8.2 F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications for that purpose, to discuss the request for access along the waterfront north of concession 4. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Mayette, seconded by Grace. All in favor? We will move into closed session. We'll be going to the closed meeting link that you had for the special meeting.
Thanks, Allison. If we can just get you to stop sharing the screen. And just waiting on Councillor Mayette.
We'll give him 1 minute.
Yes.
Do not believe he'll be coming back.
No.
I don't think so.
Okay. I will have a resolution that council arise from closed public session and resume the regular council meeting. Is there a mover and second? Moved by Vice Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Smith. All in favor? All right, I will report that council gave direction to staff on the request for access along the waterfront north of concession 4. And I have the final resolution. This regular council meeting of May 25th, 2021 hereby adjourns at 10:03 p.m. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Matheson, seconded by Rich. All in favor?